Saudi King Salman was quick, very quick, to weigh in on the shooting, relaying his thoughts through the US President Donald Trump. Let's just have a listen to what Donald Trump said.
King Salman of Saudi Arabia just called to express his sincere condolences and give his sympathies to the families and friends of the warriors who were killed and wounded in the attack that took place just this morning in Pensacola, Florida. The king said that the Saudi people are greatly angered by the barbaric actions of the shooter, and that this person in no way, shape, or form represents the feelings of the Saudi people who love the American people so much.
Now, his critics suggesting or deriding to a certain extent, Nick, the US president's first instinct, which seemed to be to temper any suggestion that the Saudi government should be held accountable for the gunman's actions. What has been the response there from those that you have spoken to?
Well, I think, as we would expect, people are really following on from what the king has said. And I think it's very significant that the shooter's uncle has said that they knew nothing was wrong, or they believe nothing was wrong with his nephew before he went on this training program over 2 years ago. And across the course of that period, they had seen nothing significant change about it, nothing to give them any warning signs. So that's a clear message from the family. And also saying, and the tribe being, a bigger representation of that same family, the tribe saying, look, this isn't the actions representing Saudi Arabia. We don't believe that this is right. The condolences for all those who were impacted as a result of his shooting. So I think that message is being echoed. What I found talking to Saudis here, and I was talking to one former very senior military officer who's still in.
They also said the exact same thing about a journalist, too. But Turkey knows for a fact that that journalist was killed by the main royal family in their council. That'd be like somebody walking into the White House and an execution being performed. We know that happened.
Involved to this day in training young recruits. He was shocked and surprised by this as well. Why? Quite simply because to get into the military here, you have to pass reasonable standards, and to get onto the training program that he was on, again, you have to cross a higher threshold, and the sort of rigor of that and the scrutiny that would be applied to any young Saudi going on a significant cross-military training program like that would sort of weed out, if you will, any bad apples. So he was really shocked that somebody should have done this. And I think that's broadly what we are seeing here. It's certainly the message coming down from the king and senior officials.
It is a busy week for Saudi Arabia. There is an awful lot going on, sporting events, a crucial GCC summit where some say we may see a glimmer of normalization with Qatar, this blockade now been going on for some 3 years. And of course, the listing of Saudi Arabia's largest asset, Saudi Aramco. This is a very important time for Saudi Arabia, and any reputational damage will be extremely painful for the country.
Look, absolutely. The relationship with President Trump and the Saudi king is strong. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and America is strong at the moment. The Saudis didn't like President Barack Obama. They found him weak on security. This alliance between the two, the selling of a large amount of weapons by the United States to Saudi Arabia since President Obama sort of in the Saudis, you didn't stand up for regional leaders during the Arab Spring. The Saudis have really stepped up their own security and defense procurement. They're the third largest spender in the world. So all this is at stake. It's sort of economically in that relationship at stake as well. The strategic partnership that the United States backs Saudi's security in the region. Saudi Arabia, for its part, plays a role in helping project United States power in the region, if you will. So step one step beyond that, to everything that you're saying there, the message that Saudi Arabia has been wanting to get across in the recent years is the message of the Crown Prince, the 2030 vision, the reform of the country, the modernization, the allowing women to drive, the music concerts that are here. And just last night, this huge, very important world heavyweight boxing championship. That was the message. That's the sort of thing that the Saudis want to be known about. So this shooting is the last thing they want in the headlines. The Aramco IPO, that's another thing they'd like to see in the headlines. So this comes at a bad time, damaging an important strategic relationship. It's many things, and none of them are good.
Nick Robertson is in Riyadh for you. Natasha on the story in Pensacola. Thank you to you both. Well, none of this is happening in isolation in this region, not by a long shot. While all that is going on with Saudi Arabia, Mr. Trump, making positive noises towards Iran, a long-time political adversary, of course, in the Middle East, in what is really a rather rare move, thanking the Islamic Republic. This weekend, Mr. Trump hailing a prisoner swap between Iran and the US.
I had a cousin
The Iranians really
that worked over in Saudi Arabia, I guess for probably 10, 12, 15 years.
Administration official said
Working over in the oil fields that made all kinds of...
Bazayan was arrested and convicted of espionage in 2015. He was held for 18 months in Tehran before...
I had a cousin, Shaki Graves, over in Rutherford, that was in the Navy, that worked over in Saudi Arabia for years, that made big money, stationed over there. And he used to come back and tell us how anti-Christ type atmosphere, environment that it was over there, pertaining to not being allowed to get caught with a Holy Bible or openly discuss your faith in God pertaining to Christ, Jesus Christ. And there's so many hidden, illegitimate secrets about that country over there that started out as a evil demonic empire and are still a evil demonic empire. Their ethics has not changed. They may have toned down their rhetoric to the point that they're not as openly displaying their anti-Semitism as much as what they used to be, pertaining to allowing now for certain women to be able to drive and certain activities to be able to go on over there. But whenever you get to looking at the core of who they are and what they are one of the most evilest entities upon to this planet. Period. No question marks, no ifs, no ands. They are wicked to the core.
He was released, and Jason joining me now from Washington, and I appreciate your time, sir. This is the first time Iran and the Trump administration have agreed on anything, as far as I can tell. Before we talk about where this might all lead, of all people, you must have been delighted when this prisoner swap was announced over the weekend, Jason.
Becky, I've been following this story for the past 3 years. Have been in touch with people in the government about it, as well as Mr. Wong's wife, very regularly over these last couple of years. So I'm overjoyed, elated that he is free, saddened that other Americans are still languishing in Iranian prisons, but hopeful that this is a sign that a further swap or other sort of release of Americans could be coming in the future.
Yeah, and this is a positive move.
That's another country that has been way far to the left as far as it not wanting to compromise with our Western culture and our Western beliefs pertaining to Iran, that has been another corrupt entity over there that has basically eliminated and contaminated their own people in the regard towards all Christians are evil and demonic. And the people who are evil and demonic are the people that's over there that are running that show over there. The same way with the Saudi government. This all stems from the old Persian Empire that the book of Daniel talks about. And it also discusses it very, very clearly in the book of Revelations pertaining to God himself saying in the first 4 chapters of Revelations to the 7 churches pertaining to Balak and Balaam, that these all stem from that evil demonic empire over there that to this day are still crucifying Christians by the scores. All of them. I say all of them. A great deal of them. They are covering up their tracks a little bit towards not wanting to look quite as preposterous as they used to be, but the fact of the matter is they're still wicked. They're still demonic. Now, does that mean that there's no room for them to liberate themselves? No. They can become a liberated nation if they choose to. But more than likely, they're not going to choose to. It will have to be forced upon to them in some sort of a forceful way. It's a good thing that they are starting to release and cooperate with the Western world in regards towards releasing this particular hostage that they have held illegitimately now for about 3 years.
For all of those who are watching what has been torrid relations, it has to be said, between the US and Iran. The line, see, we can make a deal. The words of the US President, Jason, do you think this is a real sign that a broader de-escalation is possible? After all, it was only a couple of days ago that the administration's representative on Iran, Brian Hook, was doubling down on Tehran, decrying its crackdown on protesters and emphasizing the internal problems as evidence that the country is close to collapse.
Well, I think that there is a lot of fanfare and hysteria about the imminent collapse of the Islamic Republic, and you live in that region, and I think everybody there understands that this is a influential force in that part of the world, and I think the assumptions or prognostications about its imminent demise are overblown. I also wouldn't put too much stock into the idea that this could open up a channel of much bigger negotiations over larger issues. But I will say that the prisoner issue is sort of low-hanging fruit that should be easily resolvable. For the last 40 years, the Islamic Republic has been taking foreign nationals, especially Americans, hostage and using them as political leverage. It continues to be a problem after my release and the release of other Americans in 2016. Dozens of dual and foreign nationals have been arrested in Iran. So I think first and foremost, we have to celebrate the release of Mr. Wong, remember that other Americans are being held still, but also think about what are ways that we can end this practice once and for all, make it more expensive for Iran to do this sort of thing in the future.
Yeah, no, you're making some very good points. Just hours ago, a sort of sidebar note, but something that plays into the kind of wider story here when it comes to sort of US-Iran relations. The Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani, presenting what he calls a budget of resistance, saying foreign attempts to wreck Iran's economy had, quote, failed, and the country was taking big steps, as he calls them, towards prosperity, while reducing dependence on oil revenues. A clear message of defiance in the face of the US's campaign of maximum pressure and sanctions. Do you see what Rouhani has announced as in any way being realistic at this point?
Well, Becky, 5 years ago, leading up to the nuclear deal between Iran and world powers, there was a lot of talk about a resistance economy. The idea that Iran would need to rely on itself and domestic production to fill many of its needs. While I think that might be an effective tool for growing their economy long term, this is a population that's gotten used to a pretty high standard of living compared to many of its regional neighbors. And that's plummeted over the last couple of years under the weight of U.S. sanctions. So I think potentially long-term for Iran's economy, yes, promoting a plan of domestic production and moving away from an oil-based economy makes a lot of sense. Will it help in the short term to quell dissent and opposition to economic reforms that people see as making their lives more difficult? I doubt it.
Fascinating. Jason, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Another roiling story in the Middle East that's at the heart of all these diplomatic relationships. US President Donald Trump says he believes his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, can broker peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Speaking at a pro-Israel event, Mr. Trump also criticized the previous administration's Middle East policies. Have a listen.
After 8 long years in which our alliance was undermined and neglected, I am happy to report that the United States-Israeli relationship is stronger now than ever before. I used to hear the toughest of all deals is peace with Israel and the Palestinians. They say that's the toughest of all deals, but if Jared Kushner can't do it, it can't be done.
There you go. If Jared can't do it, it can't be done. Ahead on the show, full steam ahead in Washington as Democrats prepare for their next impeachment hearing. The House Judiciary Committee chairman says a jury would convict President Trump in 3 minutes flat. That after this. So that.
There we go. Good luck to my viewers. Good luck to all of us. Shalom.